Welcome, everyone, to episode number 8 of the Country Club Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Leo McMahon, and today our guest is Jeff Voorheis, the Executive Director of the Metropolitan PGA. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks, Leo. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you took the time out because I know you're real busy this time of year with all the tournaments going on in the section, but thank you for taking the time to talk with us.
Well, you're a PGA member, and as a I don't even use the word former member of the Met section because around here, once a member of the Met section, always a member. So happy to do it and spend some time with you this morning.
Yeah, the Met section is the best. There's no doubt about it. So Jeff, like we were talking before we hit the record button, I've never heard your story before. And I'm sure there's a few other people out there who haven't heard your story before. So walk us through your journey in the game of golf. Where did you start out and right up till today?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think you might need to hire a new booking agent for your show, Leo, because I'm not sure how interesting it is, but I'll take a crack at it. I think probably pretty typical to a lot of people who fell in love with the game of golf. I was an athletic kid who played all the sports. I was okay at basketball, and actually my high school had volleyball for boys, and we were pretty good at that. And I was a baseball player, little league, but had a grandfather who was very good to all of his grandchildren, and I was very close with. And he took me and my brother for several summers. He taught us what golf was and how to play golf at a little par 3 course in Spencerport, New York, called Buttonwood Golf Course. And it was this little, the par 3s range from probably 85 to 140 yards. And you checked in a barn that was retrofit with a counter. And, they had a bucket of colored wooden tees on the counter that were 3 cents each. And, Gramps would let me and my brother grab a few of those. And that was always a highlight. And we'd play our 9 holes. And the other memory that I have of that place is after finishing 9 holes, right? And this is the good stuff about golf in general. We finished our 9 holes and we would get this place had the soda. They had soda in a refrigerator, but it was like the old school, the big glass bottles and the wooden crates. And my brother and I thought that was the coolest thing. We'd sit back at these big tall glass bottles with Grandpa in the back patio of this place for another half an hour or whatever it was, and had our soda. So that was where I got the hook. That was where I fell in love with the game. I actually kind of quit playing baseball as I got older into high school when it became time. In my high school, golf was a spring sport. So and I was okay. I think I could have played varsity baseball, but I wanted to play on the golf team. So that was the start. In the process, I got a job working carts and outside, again, like pretty typical probably to a lot of people in this game, at a place called Churchville Golf Course. That was the local Monroe County. I grew up outside of Rochester, New York, and Churchville is one of the Monroe County Parks municipal golf courses that was very close to my home. And, worked outside, pulled carts, sent people off the first tee, etc. And it was only probably after about a half a year, I got sort of promoted to work in the pro shop. And that was such a big deal at the time. And to be promoted to, I get to answer the phone and take people's greens fees and ring them into the register, right? And that was like such a big deal at that time. But so that was, high school, a couple of years. After that, I went and got a degree in sports management from Ithaca College, right there in the Finger Lakes in upstate New York.
Nice.
Yep. Great place, great part of the world. I know a lot of people that went to Cornell University. I was on the not so smart side on the other hill over at Ithaca College, but a great place and a great experience there. And so clearly I knew I wanted to work in sports. And with the affinity for golf, I was lucky to kind of stumble into the USGA's PJ Boatwright internship program, where they fund many of their state and regional golf associations to have an intern. And I went out to the Oregon Golf Association right out of college.
Really? Wow.
Graduate in May. Within a month, I went out there, and the executive director and his wife actually, put me up in their home for 2 weeks so I could find an apartment. I was kind of like Tommy Boy, getting off the plane with a garbage bag full of clothes, and that's all I had with me. And spent a summer in Oregon. Boom, again, right out of the gate. The state amateur that year was at Bandon Dunes. So here I am, first experience with a golf association. We're piling into the vans that they had with all the equipment. I don't know what's going on, right? And I drive down with the ED, and we're staying in the cottages at Bandon. And at that time, Pacific Dunes, this was 2002, Pacific Dunes was brand new. They only had the 2 golf courses, and Pacific was just recently completed. So my introduction to golf administration was a pretty high-end experience, so to speak. Going out there with the ED and picking hole locations for a state amateur on the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
It was so needless to say, I was an easy target to maybe think of this as a potential career going forward. In fact, I loved Oregon so much, I would have stayed out there had there been a full-time position available. It simply wasn't. Those are finite, temporary, seasonal internships. So that concluded. And at that time, I still had aspirations. As I said before, I was a basketball player. I kind of thought I wanted to work, in the NBA or for maybe a pro sports league or a team. And I actually did for a little while. I went down to Columbus, Georgia, and I worked for the Columbus River Dragons of the NBDL at that time. I tell you, I didn't last very long because I found out quickly that I'm not a good salesman, and you kind of have to be you start no matter what in those leagues or teams, you start in ticket sales, and I was not good at it, and I didn't have a passion for it, for pushing people and trying to, make the sale. So I kind of fizzled out there quickly, and I came back. I was back home in Rochester, New York, where I grew up, and again, I stumbled on a posting for a Met PGA junior golf coordinator position in 2004. And I was lucky enough to be hired again. I think the Boatwright internship on my resume, I know Charlie Robson well, and I think I'm sure stood out to him, as well as Kelly Clayton, who I still work with. She and I have been together since '04, and I kind of joke. I mean, she hired me really, along with Charlie. And we've had this tremendous run kind of side by side here with the Met PGA. She and we look at each other kind of as 1 and 1A around here on the staff these days. So worked with Kelly for about 1 year, and then after a guy named Carl Montagna moved on from the assistant tournament director position, I slid over into that role and worked alongside John Farley, who I know Mike Dolan talked about when he was on with you a few episodes past.
Right.
John was one of the smartest people I ever knew. He was Golf Genius and Blue Golf and all these other tournament software programs. John wrote those in Excel before they existed, sort of in the online forms that we know today. So working with John Farley was like graduate school in Microsoft Excel, among other things, but certainly that. And again, John passed away suddenly in 2008. It was actually right in June. We had just finished a Champions Tour qualifier at Rockaway Hunt Club. I'll never forget it. And that weekend, we got the terrible news. Some of John's good friends, Eddie Kelly and Mal Galetta and others, kind of learned what had happened, and it was terrible. But again, we had this void, and so I kind of slid into another role and became the tournament director out of necessity. So served in that role from 2008 until 2016, when Charlie Robson retired after his 44-year run here, leading the section. And as I tell people now, Leo, I was kind of the one standing there when it was time for Charlie to move on, and I just refused to leave. So So here we are.
You think you have 44 years in you, or what?
If they'll keep me that long, Leo, I don't plan on going anywhere.
Yeah, the Mets section is great. Uh, you talked about your grandfather, and your face lit up a little bit there. That sounded pretty cool, the way you were introduced to the game. Did you make any hole-in-ones on that par 3 course, or no?
I still have zero, and I'm reminded of that regularly when I play. I love to play. I like everybody. I wish I was a little bit better. But yeah, still 0 holes in one. But thanks for noticing that about my grandfather. A very, very special man with whom I had to this day. I still talk to my mom and dad about it. Whenever something good or something not so good happens in my life, and he's been gone for quite a while now. I still have an instinct to reach for my phone and give him a call, because when something good happened, he was one of the first people I ever wanted to share it with. And when something not so good happened, he was one of the people that I knew would help prop me up and help me feel better. We joke. I mean, my dad used to call him my PR man, because we had this local newspaper called the Suburban News out in the sticks where I grew up. And after basketball camp every summer, he would make sure to let the local editor know that me and a couple of the boys from the local area, we would go to this camp that was it was a draw. It was this New York statewide thing. And hey, these 3 boys from Churchville made the all-star team at basketball camp. And there, of course, sure enough, there'd be that little blurb in the stupid local, newspaper. So yeah, he was very special to me. And thanks for picking up on that, Leo. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, he sounds like a great man. Uh, Well, obviously your grandfather influenced you a lot. Who else influenced you in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I focus on him, but obviously my mom and dad. I had a very strong family environment growing up. I have a brother and a sister, both younger, and they were just the typical, like, unbelievably supportive. Wanted us to do whatever we wanted to do, and gave us all the opportunities and the resources to do it. Specifically in golf, back at Churchville, that Muni where I grew up working, there's a guy named Tim Vangelo. He was a PGA professional. He worked under a guy named Jack Tyndale, whose name is really well known up in that Rochester, New York area. He's a PGA Master professional, and he had the concession through those Monroe County. There were 3 of those Monroe County courses that I mentioned. Jack oversaw all 3, hired Tim Vangelo to run Churchville Golf Course. And he was kind of the one who, you looked up to, and we worked under him. We wanted to do a good job for him. And ironically, Tim is now the executive director for the Rochester District Golf Association up there. So, yeah, I think that's an example of, once it's in you a little bit, it never leaves. And so Tim kind of has been a fixture in leadership up there in Rochester. And actually, he and I reconnected not too long ago through COVID, when things were all sideways, and I was part of a group that tried to unite all of the PGA sections, the state and regionals, these small district amateur associations like the RDGA, and appeal to our leadership in New York State to how we could do things as responsibly as possible in reopening or continuing golf. So it was really cool that I got to reconnect with Tim kind of a lifetime later in the positions that we're both find ourselves in now. So Tim was one of those. Out in Oregon, the executive director that I mentioned before, his name was Jim Gibbons. As I said, they teased me a little bit, being the first time they had an intern from the East Coast, let alone New York, as they like to, as they like to. I had some nicknames when I worked out there, but Jim and his wife, as I said, they opened up their home. I stayed at their house. I remember watching, the Portland Trailblazers in the NBA playoffs in his home with him, because I didn't have a place to even live after a couple of weeks when I got there. So, and we had our intern putting championships out at Bandon. Like I said, we're out there dotting hole locations, and of course you take a putter with you, and you hit a few putts, and that was that first introduction that I had to tournament administration on a bigger level, and Jim was a really consummate leader, and again, somebody to look up to and say, wow, could that be something I could do someday, you know?
Sounds like a great experience with a nice person.
Oh, I mean, Oregon golf could be among the most underrated in this country. I mean, there are so many great places. You know, you've got kind of Portland in the metro area and all the great clubs around there, but then you go south to Eugene and of course Bandon and Bend, Oregon, kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it's a state very, very rich in just beautiful scenery and really, really great golf. So
interesting.
And then, you know, last but not least, in terms of influential, I mean, the buck kind of stops with Charlie Robson. I mean, you know, I mentioned, I think I used the phrase graduate school with John Farley and like Microsoft Excel. I mean, Charlie is one of the, at least of course in my experience, he's one of the more notable sort of folks who have mentored and quote unquote graduated people out into golf. You know, Mike Dolan is one. Mark Duzbabic, who you hear on TV almost every weekend. People like Brad Alexander, who went to work for the LPGA Tour. I mean, the list goes on and on. Jeff Hall at the USGA. I mean, people who people who became real captains of really important parts of championship administration at all levels came through Charlie at one time or another. And I'm proud to be part of that lineage. I don't anticipate going a whole lot further than the Met PGA, only because I love it here so much. But again, how can you not stop and appreciate what Charlie's done for so many people, myself included? I mentioned John, and I include Kelly in that. Kelly Clayton. If not for her, I'm not here. And as I said before, you know, she and I, we push each other every day to be better, as good as we can be for this association. And then, you know, zooming out a little bit, everyone in this section. I mean, as has been said, and we'll probably say it a few more times, this section has so many great PGA professionals who I've been blessed to kind of admire, observe, learn from. You know, I've sat in board meetings for all these years, and you know, you hear people like Greg Hurd and Rodney Loesch and Brad Worthington, and you know, now more recently people like Keith Wassam, Carl Alexander, Brian Kroll, Chris Kenny, and that's not to mention some of the folks who sat in the back of the room, and you know, when they opened their mouths, everybody got quiet because you knew something good was coming. And I think of like a Bobby Hines or a Mike Diffley in that regard. So, and the list goes on and on and on. I mean, I can't name them all, but they still are influential in my life every day. And again, one of the great things about living and working in this section.
You know, I gotta tell you a story about Charlie Robson. I had left the section. I was working down in Florida, and the U.S. Open was being played at Bethpage Black. And my mother, who was alive at the time, never picked up a golf club in her life, but she always watched golf on TV, right? So she calls me up and says, I really want to go see this U.S. Open at Bethpage. She's never been, I don't think she's been on a golf course in her life. So I called Charlie up, and Charlie gets me 2 tickets for my mother and my brother-in-law to go watch the U.S. Open at Bethpage, right? So the day they go, it rains all day, right? So I'm thinking, oh man, what a disaster, right? So I call up my brother-in-law, and she says, your mother loved it, man. She was sitting there, she didn't want to go home.
Wow.
So they sat in the rain, they watched the U.S. Open at Bethpage.
Yep. I remember I was out there. I'll never forget. Yeah. Yeah. And that's
it
Charlie.
It wouldn't have happened without Charlie.
And you know what? Had it not been a good experience and you needed 2 more tickets for the next day, guess who would have come through for you, right? I mean,
yeah,
one of the things that I learned from him that and I think it's one of the highest compliments that people continue to pay Charlie over and over and over again. It's no matter who you were, you could be the best player in the section, or you could be somebody who, we rarely see, not a tournament player. You teach at a driving range in a far reach, geographically in the section's territory. But in that moment, you were the most important person to Charlie.
Yeah, you're right. He was good at that.
And if there's one thing, I think I'm still working on it, but boy, if there's one thing that I'd love for people to ever say about me, 44 years from now or whatever, I think that might be it, because that is just what a quality in a leader, and somebody that oversees an association of 600 plus members. I mean, it's as good as it gets.
Well, you're doing a good job, and Kelly's doing a good job too, and the Met PGA is in good hands right now. Tell me a little bit about the Met PGA Junior Golf Program. It's legendary as far as I'm concerned. So where are you at today with the Junior Golf Program in the Met section?
Yeah, hopefully as good as it's been and continuing. The Met PGA Junior Golf Association actually was it's our 501c3 charitable. We've actually rebranded it. It started as just junior golf. And maybe we'll digress into a little more of this in a second, but started out focused solely on junior golf in the 70s, again, by who, Charlie. But it's evolved. About 1,300 kids a year, or families, as I like to say, are involved per year between Long Island, Westchester, Fairfield County, somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 tournaments. And if you do the math, that's squeezed in from when school lets out to when school starts up again, essentially.
That's incredible.
There's more tournaments in the summer than there are days. We've actually extended that a little bit. We've reached out on the shoulders, both before school lets out in the spring and then into the fall with some weekend events. And that's maybe a little bit of a newer evolution, and it's really just it's an answer to the demand that there is for more competition, but those are 36-hole events. We call them future series, a little bit more focused on the more competitive players, but it's part of our mission to help kids get recognized for potential college golf recruiting. Right. And again, everybody loves a Cameron Young story, the half of a percent. And those are great. But those people, the Cameron Youngs of the world in Wake Forest or Stanford or wherever it might be, they're going to find one another. I think where we see an opening is for the middle of the pack to find the middle of the pack. And if we can help our kids, find college coaches at a higher rate than we have in the past, I just think that's a huge win. So Dan Frankel, who's our junior golf director. And again, here's a story, right? This is a kid who grew up playing on the junior tour. He interned for us in the summers, and for several years now, as Kelly was formerly the junior tournament director. She's evolved into an overreaching director of our foundation. Dan has graduated into that junior tour director role and has just picked it up and done a wonderful job. Dan is kind of he's the face that the families know, and that's so important with any youth program, because it's a kind and it's a welcoming face that they know that they're going to be taken care of. So Dan's done a great job expanding, as we were just talking about, those opportunities for those competitive kids, and just doing as much as we can, like I said, to help coaches and kids find one another for their future.
Can you go into Cameron Young a little bit? He played in the Met PGA Junior program.
Yeah, what a story, right? It's kind of crazy. I sound like I'm an old man now, but thinking of him, I think of the little short, skinny kid that he was, and his father, David Young, as the head professional at Sleepy Hollow for all those years. They lived right there on the property, and as a family, they ate, slept, and drank golf, and and that's all really Cameron ever wanted to do. I think he was a pretty good hockey player as well, which we know translates really well to golf. But yeah, I grew up, played on the junior tour. At one point, maybe outgrew our local tour, which, hey, we're happy to see that, right? Kind of spread your wings and fly. And that's obviously what Cameron did. Anecdotally, Cameron was the first amateur to win the New York State Open, which is kind of a fun fact for us. But we had another here just a few weeks ago, a young man named Chen, who he works with Michael Jacobs out at Spring Rock on Long Island. What an impressive young man. Now he's playing at St. John's under Coach Phil Wildermuth, also a PGA professional at Pelham Country Club. So maybe more good things to come from another young man. If winning the State Open as an amateur is a harbinger of things to come, I think Chen has some great things in his future. But just to close the loop on Cameron, so obviously he's doing what he's doing. There's a major championship coming for him, and when the lid comes off that jar, look out, world, because he could rattle off a bunch. But through his mom and dad, David and Barbara, Cameron has been so kind. In the midst of all his unbelievable success, he's become a spokesperson for the Met PGA Foundation.
Wow,
so
nice.
He's gonna help spread the word of what we're doing, help solidify some things, and just be a great face of spreading the good word, helping us obviously hopefully raise more funds so we can continue to do great things. But how cool is that? A family that's just so rooted in the area and so grounded, despite all the things that are ahead for him and for their family, for them to do this here and now is just it's so impressive, and we couldn't be more appreciative and proud of him and our relationship with him.
So 100 junior events, that's a huge responsibility. How many do you have volunteers? How many staff?
Yeah, so like Dan Frankel came from our pool of seasonal interns, and we have others. Caitlin Sabay, who's our director of operations, she was a junior golfer, seasonal intern, now a full-time employee. So Kira Cox, who's our PGA Works fellow, those in the Westchester area know Kira's name well, because she was not just a junior player, but probably the best female player that we've had in some time. She's now a part of our staff. So we recruit a lot of kids. It's like anything. When you grew up playing junior golf, you're home for the summer from college. You could be a lifeguard, you could work at the ice cream stand, or maybe you could come and work junior golf tournaments. And a lot of these kids, I think, prefer that. We try to have some fun. We work hard, but we try to make it fun for them and give them a little taste of golf administration. And I think if you love golf, working in golf seems pretty cool. So yeah, we have a group of about, round figure, it's about 20 per year, who assist Dan Frankel with, just being in the field. And it's, there's most days of the week, there's at least 2 or 3 tournaments going on. So we've got teams kind of just running from place to place. So it's an impressive operation that they run, and we're lucky to kind of have that pool of people that want to come back and kind of stay involved in golf and help us out with kids.
So how many professional events do you have each year?
Yeah, that number is around 70 if you take into account every qualifier and pro-am and every day of every major championship, et cetera, et cetera. I think that it comes to approximately 70 days.
Okay.
And there's a lot coming up. There's a lot coming up, Leo. As you know, July and August tend to be pretty busy. I would add June to that too, member guest season for the club. So our schedule is kind of loaded up in the front and on the back shoulder in terms of having events for professionals to play in. We're kind of turning that corner right now. Next week, the 31st of July, the 1st and 2nd is our Met PGA Professional Championship, which, as you know, that serves as the qualifying for the PGA professional championship nationally, and then ultimately the top 20 that represent us in the PGA Championship. So that local event for us next week is being hosted by Brayburn Country Club and the Golf Club of Purchase. 54-hole event with a cut after 36, and I think it's kind of 1A with the Met PGA Championship in terms of the importance for the pros around here, because as we said, getting into that national championship and a crack at qualifying for a major is that's among the pinnacles for people who like to play and compete. So we've got that followed pretty quickly by our assistant championship, which is held annually at Bethpage Red. Our senior championship, which again is a national championship qualifier as well. That'll be hosted by Seawain. And then the section championship, which is kind of the creme de la creme, is going to be at Nassau Country Club, September 11th through 13th. Yeah. And
Nice.
we just had the Pro-Am actually yesterday. Augie Horner, who used to run the Wall Street Charity Pro-Am, which was huge in its heyday, and it kind of went away in 2008, 2009. Augie partnered with us to help bolster our championship Pro-Am. So Nassau hosted that yesterday. It was fantastic. They completed a golf course renovation about 2 years ago. So they just have unbelievable bunkering, not only aesthetically good looking, but really strategically positioned fairway bunkering and greenside bunkering, sort of the runoff with the fairway height kind of running into those fairway bunkers. And, the targets can become small depending on the hole location. Certainly, as always, we expect the conditions in the middle of September to be just about as pure and also as challenging as it gets. So we had a great Pro-Am yesterday, and we look forward to a great section championship here in just about 6 weeks.
Yeah, I was an assistant for Harold Kolb there in the 80s.
Yeah,
it was a great club, really great golf club, great membership, and it's nice that you have the event there, because I was there, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and it was in nice shape. They did a really good job of renovating the place.
Great golf course, and like to your point, it's they're proud of their history there. Obviously, even the buildings themselves, it's got sort of a very authentic kind of original feel. Obviously, renovations are necessary in any structure, clubhouse like that, but they've done a really nice job of keeping the grill room looking and feeling a certain way. They've got this really cool, I'm sure, as you know, the halfway house is
right.
Calamity Jane. And so it's there's a feeling at Nassau Country Club that's like, you kind of, I don't want to say you went back in time, but that there's this preservation of their history and really some overall golf history at that.
Right.
Facility.
Yeah, it's a cool place.
Yeah.
What else can I ask you here? Oh yeah, so what about education, Jeff? What do you have going on in education in the Met section?
Yeah, we've started probably, I'm gonna undershoot on this one probably because time flies, but I'll say it's probably about 13 years now, maybe. We've recognized that in-season education is pretty difficult. People are so busy now more than ever, and to get away from the club for anything is a real challenge. So we've all but done away with education from June until September, even October. But what we have done is a really robust slate of offerings from after Thanksgiving all the way through March. And I don't want to, I hesitate to name names because we've had so many great leaders, but the most recent is John Hobbins, who's really taken the reins as the chairman of our education committee. And it's one of those, we call them our winter education series. It's a perfect example of kind of outdoing ourselves, from one year to the next in terms of what we're able to do. And obviously Zoom had a lot to do with that. I'm a little bit, mixed on Zoom. I think it's highly efficient. I love to shake somebody's hand and look them in the eye and be together in person. So I don't know that we'll ever go all in on one or the other, but you can't deny the convenience and the efficiency of, having somebody from Orange County, New York, and somebody from the Hamptons both be able to be on the same
Right.
education program,
Right.
and neither one of them had to drive, 2.5 hours over 2 bridges, 3 hours of traffic, the whole story. So, and for them to, to go into Michael Breed's studio or to have breakfast with Rob Labritz or, and so on and so on with the number of great programs that we've had, it is really effective and convenient. So yeah, that's been great. And we still have sort of, again, the crown jewel, if you will, of the education program is that educational summit that we have every spring where, and that one is in person, and we bring in a couple of really well-known names in the world. Certainly one of them is usually in the world of teaching and coaching and instruction, but the other, is maybe the mental side or fitness, or, we've had statistics folks over the years, as you know. So the one we just had this spring at Trump Ferry Point with Bernie Najar and James Siekman, it was great. It was hands-on. There was an indoor component with some classroom style discussions, but luckily it was late enough in April. We were able to go outdoors, and we had people put their hands on clubs, take some swing lessons from Bernie, and we had a few people learn how to chip from and pitch the ball from Siekman. So it was fantastic. So credit to everybody, but that's kind of paved the way. But as I said, right now, John Hobbins is the one carrying the flag for it.
And you also have a significant program for the veterans too, correct?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And that was, that's back to the foundation and sort of our evolution from being solely focused on junior golf to now the 3 pillars, which we one is youth, which includes junior golf tournaments, but also hopefully people are aware of drive, chip, and putt, which is a great introductory program, as well as PGA Junior League, which for me it's a step before playing in an individual stroke play tournament because it's team golf. It's everybody can identify with youth soccer with the jersey, and you're playing with your friends, and like me and Grandpa having a soda. For a lot of kids, youth golf is just that. It's doing something afterward. It's not even the play itself. So so in addition to junior golf tournaments, we have those other programs under our youth pillar. The military pillar is where our PGA Hope program is, and I'd like to talk about that. And then the third pillar is inclusion and doing things to attract those who have had less opportunity or less access to the game, to create ways to introduce golf and to bring them into golf. But the military pillar is probably where we've seen the most growth since 2015. Program is called PGA Hope. It's an acronym for Helping Our Patriots Everywhere, and it's a 6-week golf instruction program where Met PGA professionals volunteer their time. It's at 3 different sites, one kind of northern, one right in the center of the section in the Bronx, and then one out on Long Island. They're all connected with VA hospitals. That's where we identify our participants from. But it's 6 weeks of golf clinic, and it's a, sure, we have some people who may have played golf before and are coming back to the game, but the majority of them have played very little, if not no golf. So, week 1, it might be just a classroom, and there's some vocabulary that we use, right? And golf terminology, and some of the early weeks we teach them how to drive a golf cart. So we don't just run to the driving range. This thing really starts with, in a lot of ways, breaking down some of the barriers to people getting involved in golf, because as we know, it can be a little intimidating to those who, where am I supposed to stand? What am I supposed to wear? What do I say? Where do I check in when I go to the golf course? So we break down those barriers early. We develop a relationship and a rapport, and by week 3, 4, 5, 6, these people not only are they think of the golf pros as friends, they don't want to leave. And so what started out with, actually in 2015, we only had 1 class of about 30. Now, as I said, we have the 3 classes every year. But once they graduate, and we do have big graduation ceremony every year,
Nice.
where the veterans actually receive a set of golf clubs through a partnership with Callaway Golf. Because the idea is not just to have 6 weeks and then it's over, but 6 weeks. And when you graduate, it's more of a beginning than a finish, right? We want to send you off on your journey. Keep playing. Here's some clubs. Kelly does a great job. Here's places to play. Maybe some discounts at driving ranges or public golf courses.
Beautiful.
But we can't keep them away to the point that we had to develop a PGA Hope League where the graduates get together. It's similar
Beautiful.
it's similar to the PGA Junior League structure where
Right.
they create teams, they play matches against the other teams, they have practices, and so it's what started with 30 is now up to almost 2,000 veterans that we've put through the program and who love golf, who love the PGA and love PGA professionals, and I think it's one of these mutually rewarding things where you've got the pros thanking the veterans for their service and to our country, and the veterans are thanking the pros for giving their time and teaching them golf, and it's an unbelievable. You can't describe sort of the goosebumps that you get, and really, in a lot of ways, it's camaraderie, and golf just happens to be that conduit, right? It's again, I go back to having my soda with grandpa, right? It's like those are the memories that people have, and golf is just the thing that helped bring us all there. And for these veterans, it gets them out of their house, it gets them out of potentially a dark place mentally, whatever, it doesn't matter. They're out there, they're in nature, they're with friends, they're in a safe and welcoming environment, and they've got these wonderful men and women PGA professionals who are stewarding them through that process.
So Jeff, what I'm pulling out of all this is you got to have great organizational skills to pull this all off. A lot of it taking place in a few months, and you got to have a great staff, helping you to do all this, because it's a lot of work, and that's one of the things I wanted to pull out here. You got a lot going on. I wanted people to know that,
Yeah,
and
we do, Leo.
I want to thank you and your staff as a former Met PGA section member for doing a great job for us, and thank you.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I mean, we do, but we love it. I think I said this before. Like, if you love golf in what we do, you never have a bad day. I mean, we do golf. We're not curing illnesses or performing surgeries, but it is still work. There's plenty of long days, and to your point, there's a lot of administration and organization that has to be done. But if you love what you do, it is a lot of fun. You nailed it. I am not organized, but I have a lot of great people that work with me. Kelly, Caitlin, Dan, just to name a few. Yeah, they do a great job, and it's a team. I think one of the things we talked about, you had mentioned to me, what advice would you give to somebody who wanted to get into golf? You still have to be willing to work, like in any industry, nothing's handed to you. And again, maybe I'll sound like an old person here, but I fear that we as a society, we've slipped up a little bit in the desire to roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty sometimes. And and I hope I'm an example of that to the people that I work with. I'm fortunate to be sort of in this leadership role or management position, whatever you want to say, but I still find myself breaking down cardboard boxes at events with, loading up and unloading, our tournament van right alongside our interns. And I think it's just important to never forget that. Like, nobody's too good. And I know you as a club manager or in the different roles that you've served in, I'm sure you're nodding your head and relating, like, yeah, like somebody, we're all in this together as a team. And the most important thing to remember is the job just has to get done. And none of us are above or beneath, what has to get done. And hopefully to our members, and maybe to your point, if it's like the duck on the pond where, the legs are the legs are paddling underneath, but on top it looks like a nice smooth ride, then we've nailed it. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So you reminded me, I played in an assistance event at Pelham, probably in the 80s. And after the event, we all went to a delicatessen around the corner, and we all ordered sandwiches and soda, and we all sat on a wall that was next to the delicatessen. And I remember Brad Worthington was there. I can't remember who else. And it was just great. It was just on our day off, a bunch of guys and a few ladies were sitting there enjoying lunch and just shooting the shit about the golf business. You know, it was a good day. You know,
And you know,
similar to you. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, you'll be pleased to know that we do still have an assistance tour. You know, one day events on Mondays, and head professionals and their clubs are kind enough. You know, it's we try to keep it low budget. Hey, pull out the carts if the superintendent's okay with us using the golf course in the afternoon. But more often than not, the head pro will order some pizzas or some hero sandwiches and maybe a couple cases of beverages. And exactly what you just described, the assistant pros, there's still a great deal of fraternalism that is, it's, you know, those little cracker barrels, if you will, are probably just as good, if not better sometimes than super organized conversations, because people maybe are a little more open, a little more willing to share. And like you said, that's what it's all about. You know, people learn from one another, maybe feeling each other's pain in some ways, and you know, knowing that they're not in it alone in that middle of the 100-day war. And but yeah, it's we're really blessed to have it. We have probably one of the higher instances of assistant pros here in our section, so it's a big group. And they rely on one another quite a bit, and it's fun to see, and it's fun that it's cool to hear that, you know, it was like that, you know, some years ago, and that hopefully we've still, it's probably different, it's probably evolved and changed, but that we're still trying to preserve it, because again, not to be cliche, I've probably said it 70 times in this conversation, but it's kind of what it's all about.
You know, when I went down to Florida and I would talk to the pros there, they couldn't believe, when I was in the med section, it's probably true today, but when I was in the med section, I could pretty much walk into any golf shop in the entire med section and somebody would say, "Hey, Leo, how's it going?" You know, we were all connected, you know, which South Florida is not like that. But the med section is a tight section, and it's a big section, but everybody knows each other, and it's a good feeling, you know.
Well, you know, the stakes are high, the expectations are high here, obviously. You know, some of it, again, it may be more via text message now, but there's no doubt. I mean, I see guys at events, and you can just tell they when they're having lunch, or they're connected. They're very connected, to your point, and they stay connected to, and it's probably there's some wisdom there, right? It's to make sure that everybody's keeping up with those standards and expectations. And hey, how did you handle a similar situation, or what do you think about this? I mean, I think some of the smartest people I know would tell you that the best ideas they ever had, you know, weren't theirs, but they were stolen or borrowed or whatever you want to say. So I think, again, we're foolish if we don't rely on one another, because we have so many experts in so many different aspects of the golf business, club operations, tournament operations, instruction, on and on and on. And these guys are smart enough to rely on one another for that help.
Well, Jeff, this has been great. I wish your grandfather was still alive so he could promote this podcast for us.
Me too.
At least get us in the newspaper up there in Monroe County. But this was great, and have a great rest of the season. Take some time for yourself. You know, don't kill yourself, but enjoy yourself this summer. And thanks for everything you do. You know, I'm speaking on behalf of all the golf professionals up there. Thank you, Jeff.
Oh, this was a lot of fun. Yeah, it's fun to talk about Gramps for a while. And I'd be remiss too if I didn't tell you, I will take some time for myself. I've got a beautiful wife, and 3 daughters, 8, 6, and 3 years old. So
Nice.
we are in an unbelievably fun time of our lives right now, watching these
Beautiful.
wonderful young ladies grow up. So, and I hope, to your point, I hope that all the golf professionals that we serve are able to do the same, because I think, if we've learned nothing in the last, 3 or 4 years, it's life is short, family is everything, and that may be one of the silver linings of COVID, is that people are more able and willing to take advantage of time with their families. So hope the same for you, and certainly hope the same for all of our PGA professionals too.
Thank you, Jeff, and enjoy the rest of your season.
Thanks, Leo. This was great.
All right. Have a good day. Bye-bye.